Every story has got to start somewhere, whether it be from small beginnings or with a bang. This is the same for books, films, and even games, because they need somewhere to drop their audience in. When it comes to games, this can come in the form of a level 1-1 tutorial mission, or in the case of Resident Evil, a big spooky mansion. Now, yes, the Spencer Mansion might be where the original Resident Evil took place, and yeah, there was a prequel, but for most of our characters in the franchise, it all didn't kick off till the Raccoon City incident. Those three words placed together have become the backbone of Resident Evil for over 2 decades, and with the past remakes, Capcom isn't letting anyone forget. On paper, this all might seem like a standard zombie outbreak story, with a small town being overwhelmed. But amongst the chaos, there was some trying to uncover the sinister plot that the Umbrella Corporation was covering up. A select few made it out to carry on fighting and tell their story. So this is everyone that made it out before the bomb fell, how they ended up in Raccoon City, and what they did afterwards. Oh, and for the purpose of this video, we will be counting characters that escaped the city and not the mansion in the Arcade Mountains. Of course, that means also with the RE3 remake, Barry is no longer the one who saves Jill or Carlos, so he also doesn't count. With that being said, I'm Ben Roy from WhatCulture.com, and this is Resident Evil, Every Raccoon City Survivor Explained. Ricardo Irvin. This snivelling excuse for a human being serves as the director for Tricell's oil fields, and he is nothing more than a puppet in the long list of people being used by Wesker. But he was suspected by the BSAA to have survived Raccoon City, but this could never be proven. Like a lot of evidence against Umbrella, it burned with the city, and after his death in Resident Evil 5, his secrets died with him. Frederick Downing. One that many might not be aware of, this former Umbrella employee escaped Raccoon City before it was destroyed, with a sample of the T and G virus at his disposal. 7 years after Raccoon City became a smouldering hole in the ground, he re-emerged as a savior with a vaccine, once a small T virus outbreak occurs in an airport. Trying to make a profit from this mini outbreak, he is quickly found out and apprehended by Claire, Leon, and Angela Miller. And that's the end of his story. The Resident Evil Outbreak survivors. This one's for the die-hard fans, as they'll want to see some sort of Outbreak representation in this video. Though the player might be able to save everyone in Outbreak, it depends on the player at the end of the day, and their fates are not set in stone. Sadly, none of this bunch will ever show up in any significant capacity in the main series, and Capcom will likely never reference them again. We will never truly know if they survived or not, even though the wiki says they did. Some of us, though, will always remember those survivors. Lastly, thanks to an Easter egg in Resident Evil 7, Ethan Winters can find an article written by Alyssa Ashcroft in the Baker family home. This kind of ties things up nicely and just lets us know that Outbreak is canon. Sergei Vladimir. One of the shadowy heads of Umbrella, Sergei was also part of the Russian-Afghan conflict that plagued the late 20th century. Once he joined Umbrella, Sergei became one of Oswald E. Spencer's most loyal soldiers and helped him found the Umbrella Biohazard Countermeasures Service. Working alongside the US government, he led the UBCS during the Raccoon City incident and was meant to help rescue as many survivors as possible. But of course, this wasn't his real plan. He was there unofficially to collect data on bioweapons, and escaped in a helicopter after it delivered another tyrant to the city. In the twilight of Umbrella, he avoided trials and became obsessed with the Talos project, though his past caught up with him and he was killed by Albert Wesker. Wesker went on to steal his data and shut down the Red Queen for good, putting an end to Umbrella. Hunk. In mid-September, shortly before the Raccoon City incident, Hunk was sent by Umbrella to steal samples of the G virus from William Birkin located in the Nest. Operation Nest Wrecker was a messy one and saw Alpha Team all but wiped out. Surviving his encounter with the mutated William Birkin, all Hunk could do was escape the burning city as it fell under infection. As depicted in the 4th Survivor mode, Hunk had to fight his way through the sewers, through the RPD, and make it to the front gate for extraction. That night he truly earned his nickname, the Grim Reaper, as he survived against all the odds and was airlifted out by Nighthawk. Later, after the Rockford Island incident and the fall of Umbrella, Hunk became a legendary mercenary for hire. A truly happy ending for this gas mask wearing individual. Sherry Birkin. Daughter of Annette and William Birkin, Sherry might be one of the most innocent individuals caught up in all this. Though uniquely tied up with the events that took place in Raccoon City, she owes her life to Claire Redfield. Claire not only found Sherry, but found the antidote for her and helped her escape. Once William was consumed by the G-Virus, he ran rampant around the city's underbelly until he finally located his daughter. Because she shared the same DNA, she would be a perfect host to continue the G-Virus. And other than this, his paternal instincts instincts drew him to her. After escaping Raccoon City along with Claire and Leon, Sherry was held in protective custody until the BSAA and Chris Redfield could finally put an end to Wesker. Yes, that time he punched a boulder into a volcano. She then joined to the Division of Security Operations and put her unique understanding of bioterrorism to good use. Thus follows the events of Resident Evil 6 and her finally getting blood samples from Wesker's offspring to help fight off BOWs in the future. Carlos. One of the many mercenaries hired by Umbrella as part of the UBCS, Carlos was in the majority that didn't have a clue what Umbrella actually intended on this mission. He thought he was there to get as many people out as possible, but it soon turned out that this was far from the truth. Because of Jill Valentine, he was made aware of what Umbrella was really doing, and eventually turned on them after his team was destroyed, thanks in part to Nikolai and the unstoppable tyrant, Nemesis. It should also be said that former STARS member owes Carlos her life, as he helped her out of a few situations where it was basically all over. He of course also gives Jill the vaccine that saved her from a fate worse than death. Not a lot changed for Carlos in the Resident Evil 3 remake, other than his personality was a little less horny teenager and more of a professional mercenary. We never learn what happens to him after the events of Resident Evil 3, but his hatred was directed to Umbrella, and they pretty much liquidated after the city fell. It would make sense for Carlos to join the BSAA, but so far Capcom has left him and his fuzzy hair on the shelf. Ada Wong. This now legendary super secret agent might have one of the most mysterious pasts out of all the Resident Evil characters. As an independent contractor, she was sent into Raccoon City by Albert Wesker, where she was meant to recover samples of the G-Virus for him. Albert knew how much more destructive the G-Virus could be, but getting hold of them was a mission for Ada and her alone. Though thought to be dead after she was shot by Annette Birkin and fell into a dark abyss, Ada would later make it out and assist Leon taking out Mr. X by dropping him a handy quad-barrel rocket launcher, because that's how you beat every boss. And then she would go on to make a habit of saving Leon throughout the years. The two formed a unique relationship that would continue all the way to Resident Evil 6, where they would sort of finally fight alongside for once against Derek E. Simmons, putting an end to Project Ada for good. A program that saw Derek obsessed with cloning Ada over and over again. It should also be noted that Leon didn't see her again until the events of RE4, where she would eventually steal the lost Plagos parasite from him and deliver it to Albert Wesker, keeping the whole biohazard train moving. Leon S. Kennedy. A rookie cop on his first day, Leon S. Kennedy had no idea what was to follow once he entered Raccoon City. Upon arrival, he seemingly was tied to Claire Redfield, but not before being separated in the RPD, thanks to one hungry zombified truck driver with a mouthful of juicy burger. After being briefed by Marvin, he soon finds out that the city isn't the best place to be. For a first assignment, this is a tough one. He has to fend off countless zombies, fight William Birkin, and run away from Mr. X, all whilst tiptoeing around liquors. Never venturing too far from the walls of the RPD, he would eventually discover that the Umbrella Corporation was behind it all, and escape via the nest with Claire and Sherry. This was all in his first day. After intense questioning by the US government, he would go on to work for US Stratcom and the Division of Security, as Leon devoted his life to a cause he didn't know existed until the destruction of Raccoon City. Somehow most of his BOW encounters would eventually end up with him bumping into Ada Wong. They have to stop meeting like this. And also alongside Chris Redfield, he has become one of the most featured Resident Evil protagonists. Claire Redfield. Sister to Chris Redfield, Claire would end up in all this after her brother went to Europe and didn't message back. Thanks to her interest in motorcycles, it was easy for her to hop on the road and head over to Raccoon City and find out what had happened to him. This is where the innocent university student died, and Claire would have to fight for her life if she was to make it out in one piece. When separated from Leon, she would go on to discover the corruption in the city and find out that not only Police Chief Brian was another pawn, but Umbrella ran this town. After escaping Raccoon City, Claire didn't stop there and would still continue her search for Chris. She finally found him as a feud between Wesker and Ashford ensued. In a turn of events, Claire would step away and focus on saving lives with TerraSave rather than fighting like her brother for the BSAA. This of course didn't stop her being wrapped up in another outbreak and being abducted in the events of Resident Evil Revelations 2. Then after defeating Alex Wesker with Barry and Moira, she would finally leave BOW fighting to Chris. Jill Valentine. One of the few that made it out of the Spencer mansion, and last of the STARS members. Jill was wrapped up in all this mess from the very start. Sent in to save Alpha Team, alongside notable members Chris, Barry and Wesker, the nightmare began. After the mansion incident, she was dismissed from STARS, and was left with post-traumatic stress from the whole thing. Left alone as Chris went after Umbrella and Barry went back to his family, Jill wouldn't have any idea what was around the corner for Raccoon City. Once the outbreak started, Umbrella used the city as a testing ground, but they saved one especially for Stars. The Nemesis had the sole goal of eliminating every surviving Stars member, though thanks to help from Carlos, they both made it out of the city moments before it was sterilized. That wasn't the end of the fight against Umbrella and those who had wronged her. Jill was just getting started. She also did remain infected, even after receiving the antidote, and this would come into play during Wesker's global saturation. Forming the BSAA with Chris, they took the fight to Umbrella, and eventually Wesker himself, in an effort to clean up their mess, but was captured and turned into a mindless puppet. Chris wouldn't let his friend suffer and eventually freed her from his grasp. Then along with Sheva, they ended Wesker for good. And that's every Raccoon City survivor explained. Who would you like to see get their own game next? And do you think the Outbreak survivors should come back in more of a major way? Let me know down in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I've been Ben Roy from WhatCulture.com, and until next time, stars.